changes, any thoughts, any ideas, any practices must be transparent. Any ideas, I agree with those who say we can fix any ideas. Of course we can. Of course we can. All that we have to do is fix with the intent of providing the best possible service to the residents and the people. I also believe that if there is righteousness in the heart, there's also beauty in the character, which means that if the intent is righteous, then we'll have a system that will work for the benefit of the people. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. I now recognize Ms. Sanchez to strike the last word, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution of inquiry asks about staff reductions, closures, and consolidations of Social Security offices. The implementation of the so-called Department of Government Efficiency has caused widespread confusion and chaos. Illegal mass firings of federal workers and cancellation of grants have left my constituents looking for answers. I expect my colleagues have experienced similar questions from their constituents if they are bothering to hear them out. I would expect all of my colleagues to vote yes on this resolution of inquiry, if only to gather much needed information about Elon Musk's actions in the Social Security Administration. DOJ's website lists Social Security field office closures in Carlsbad, California, Abilene, Texas, Greenville, North Carolina, and Logan, West Virginia. If it was me representing these cities, I would want more details about why my constituents were losing these valuable services. We all know that Social Security wait times are too long. Office closures will only increase them. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The richest man in the world is going after Social Security, and he doesn't even understand it, doesn't know how it works. Elon Musk calls Social Security a Ponzi scheme, and because of the cap, Elon Musk paid all of his Social Security taxes on January 1st of this year at 12:15 a.m. He doesn't have to pay a dime more into Social Security after that. My Republican colleagues are smart, compassionate people. I have a hard time believing that they are comfortable slashing the benefits that their constituents rely on. And I have a harder time believing that they don't want to understand what the richest man in the world is doing with their constituents' money and data. This resolution simply asks the question. I look forward to all my colleagues voting yes to find out more about what is happening in their districts. And I want to just say this. At the start of this markup, I had one of my staff call the Social Security customer service line. We've been discussing this resolution for quite some time now, and she's still on hold. Closing Social Security field offices and reducing staff is only going to increase those hold times for our most vulnerable, I should say. All constituents are valuable, but our most vulnerable constituents. And Republicans don't seem to care, but I suspect that your constituents will. And with that, I yield back.
The member yields back. I now recognize Ms. Chu to strike the last word for 5 minutes.
I strongly support this resolution of inquiry, and it is because my constituents are sick with worry at the risk of fraudsters having their Social Security numbers, banking information, and other personal information shared with Musk cronies who've invaded the Social Security Administration. So let's be clear. President Trump and Elon Musk have launched a public campaign against Social Security. Mr. Musk is calling Social Security a Ponzi scheme, and both he and President Trump are spreading widely discredited lies about the program and its integrity. But the facts don't add up. Let me read just a few of the countless news headlines debunking their false claims. The Associated Press says tens of millions of dead people aren't getting Social Security checks despite Trump and Musk claims. ABC News says Musk misreads Social Security data. Millions of dead people are not getting benefits, experts say. CBS News says New Social Security chief refutes claims of deceased people over 100 years old getting checks. The Washington Post says Elon Musk claims of Social Security fraud don't hold up, and here's why. And the New York Times says millions of dead people on Social Security, the agency's own data says otherwise. And in fact, the claims by Elon Musk are based on complete misunderstanding of Social Security's data systems, which often lack complete birth and death information for people born before 1920, before Social Security was established and long before electronic records were kept. A 2023 Inspector General report said that almost none of these people born before 1920 with missing information are paid benefits. But my constituents are also worried because the Trump administration is taking a wrecking ball to the Social Security Administration. Far from making the agency more efficient, they are undermining its ability to serve the public. And why are they trying to destroy the Social Security Administration? It's the first step of a long-standing effort by Republicans to dismantle trust in Social Security and slash benefits. The Trump administration wants to close Social Security offices across the nation and slash the agency's workforce by nearly 1 in 8 employees. Social Security Administration, this administration is already at a 50-year staffing low due to years of underfunding, and it's serving more beneficiaries than ever. How will gutting its workforce help it to serve the American people? Well, the answer is that it doesn't, and in fact, it's very likely a move to undermine confidence so that the Trump administration can privatize it. And with that, I yield back.
Member yields back. I now recognize Ms. Moore for 5 minutes to strike the last word.
Thank you so very, very much, Mr. Chairman and ranking member and members. I am reminded of what Maya Angelou said when she said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And then, of course, Rachel Maddow, who is a news commentator on MSNBC, often says you need to watch what people do and not what they say. And I think that those are very helpful admonitions in view of this discussion here today. We have our Republican colleagues swearing that Donald Trump will not do anything to Social Security. And, you know, from your lips to God's ears, let's hope, you know, I'm on your side. I'm hoping that you're right. But we have known that Republicans have long wanted to destroy Social Security and really privatize it. As a matter of fact, former chair of this committee, my good friend Paul Ryan from Wisconsin, openly tried to privatize Social Security. My own Senator Johnson was the first person I ever heard call it a Ponzi scheme, long before Elon Musk was on the scene. And Mick Mulvaney, during the Trump 1 administration, who was a former chief of staff, testified before the Joint Economic Committee that, yes, we need to go after Social Security because just like Jesse James robbed banks, it's because that's where the money is. And so I am, you know, I'm not convinced that they're not going to do it. Musk has just basically said we need to go after entitlement spending, which he designates as Social Security and Medicare. So I think that it's important for our Republican friends not to be willfully ignorant, to be useful idiots about this. You know, and so that's what they say. But what are they doing? Let's look at that. This CR that we passed just yesterday, in order to flat fund the operations of the Social Security Administration, we would have had to have added $600 million. Instead of adding the $600 just to flat fund the agency, they cut it by an additional $100 million. That's $700 million. Watch what they do. You know, you're trying to save Social Security, but you want to destroy customer service. We heard Mr. Estes, the new chairman of the subcommittee, talk about how awful the customer service is. Well, yeah, but that is part of the scheme, to undermine Social Security to the point that people lose faith in it. And as a matter of fact, Martin O'Malley sent me this text. He says they just want to wreck it so they can rob it. And now with this CR and the mass firings taking place in Social Security, as we speak, they are destroying customer service for the American people, driving this agency to collapse and putting at grave and serious risk the monthly benefits of 72 million Americans. That's the former commissioner of Social Security, Martin O'Malley. And then the President Trump tells us that he's going to cut taxes on Social Security. Well, that really sounds great. Send people, I heard, $5,000 checks. That really sounds great. And that, of course, would help people making $20,000, $30,000 immediately, but in the long run, they would be hurt the most, and wealthy people would be helped the most. But in the meantime, it would cost the trust fund $1.5 trillion to do that. You know, watch what they do, not what they say. That would undermine Social Security tremendously. The Social Security payment accuracy is about 99.8%. So I don't know how much waste, fraud, and abuse can be found in it. This really, the last point that I want to make is that Elon Musk is a tech tycoon. And I wonder what the value of this data is to him. It's immeasurable. So this is a serious conflict of interest for this man to have Social Security data when he is a tech tycoon.
Member's time has expired.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence, and I yield back.
I recognize Mr. Boyle to strike the last word for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Strike the last word. Mr. Chairman, 70 million Americans get Social Security. It is the most successful anti-poverty program in American history. It is sometimes called an entitlement. I prefer to call it an earned benefit. Millions of Americans throughout their working careers paid into Social Security with every paycheck. It truly is an earned benefit. Now, there's some who have expressed falsely the notion that somehow Social Security contributes to our national debt. It doesn't at all. In fact, right now, there is a $2.7 trillion surplus in the Social Security Trust Fund. It has been certified both by the Congressional Budget Office as well as the Social Security trustees that there is enough money in the trust fund to fully pay out benefits, 100% of benefits, today through the year 2035, so for the next decade. And certainly we have enough time over the next decade to make modifications that are necessary to ensure that Social Security is fully there for generations to come. So no, the greatest threat to Social Security is not its current financing. The greatest threats to Social Security are Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Elon Musk recently called Social Security a Ponzi scheme. Not the first time, by the way, that he has used that exact term, a Ponzi scheme. You know, Vice President Vance last fall explicitly said that Elon Musk would, and I quote, target Social Security, and that he has. Elon Musk has previously raised the specter of privatization of Social Security. This is also not the first time that we have heard of a Republican effort to privatize Social Security. Exactly 20 years ago, when George W. Bush won re-election, right about this moment, he said, and I quote, "I have political capital and I intend to use it." He wanted to spend that political capital on the privatization of Social Security. Fortunately, that effort was defeated. Elon Musk is not the first and won't be the last Republican to call Social Security a Ponzi scheme. There are multiple Republican members of the U.S. Senate serving right now who called it exactly that, a Ponzi scheme, one of whom went further and had legislation that every 5 years, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid would have to be reauthorized or they would go away. That is the ultimate goal. We should be under no illusion whatsoever that this so-called DOGE effort is to identify waste or fraud. Social Security is a 99.8% accuracy rate. Private sector would do well to meet such a high rate of 99.8%. It is no wonder that Social Security is the most popular government program that we have. So on behalf of my own father and the tens of millions of Americans who rely on Social Security, who have earned that benefit, I know that we on this side of the dais will continue to speak out and defend it. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Now recognize the member from Virginia, Mr. Breyer.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, we've heard the $72 billion number a number of times. The OIG report from 2015 to 2022. That's an awful lot of money, but let's point out that's less than 1% of the money paid out over that 8-year period of time. It's still a great deal. We need to deal with it, but it's not like, show me any organization, any business operation that doesn't have 1% mistake in it, and I'll be astonished. By the way, let me also point out that during that 8-year period of time, Donald Trump was president for those 4 years, 4 of those 8 years. Look, my real deep concern is about Elon Musk's attitude about his misunderstanding of and his plans for the Social Security Administration. But let me just first begin with the absolute lack of transparency about Elon Musk himself and his many, many complicated financial interests. I just compare it to my personal experience. When I wanted to serve on the Obama transition team, 2008, I got fingerprinted for the first time. They went and talked to my employees and my neighbors. I had to file extensive background check. It took me hours to fill out hundreds of pages. When I went to Switzerland for the State Department, I was prohibited from any ties to the business I'd spent decades building in order to prevent any possible corruption. When I came here, when I owned stocks, I had to report them every single month, any activity. We have to do this extensive financial disclosure every May. For 10 years, I've bought every meal, every cup of coffee, paid every toll. Never allowed to promote any business because I'm not special. We are not special. We are servants of the public. And then you get Elon Musk, who is a very special case. He is the greatest possibility for corruption by far in American history. And don't get me started on Tesla advertisements on the White House lawn. My constituents depend on Social Security, not just as an earned entitlement to support them after retirement, but as an agency they expect to work with when we need it. Every year I go to our Social Security office to visit, pump them up, and I'm so impressed with how hard everyone is working. Everyone's busy the entire time. So closing offices and messing with a system that people have paid into their entire lives, closing without full transparency, it's just crazy. I can't imagine a need to access Social Security payment information in this manner, short of trying to dismantle the agency. We've heard again and again that Musk thinks it's a Ponzi scheme. But look, if someone's messing with my money, I want full transparency of what they're doing. And the Trump-Vance administration has the Silicon Valley perspective of move fast and break it. But that doesn't work with the federal government. It doesn't work with the social administration. And if the goal is to derail and dismantle the Trump Social Security, Trump shouldn't hide that. My Republican friends have again said today they have no intention of doing that. But when Musk and Trump close offices, fire employees, make it harder to get the phone answered, make it longer to get an appointment, when they destroy people's confidence in the most important anti-poverty program in the history of mankind, what else are we to conclude? If they can make Social Security dysfunctional, why not turn over the $2.7 trillion of assets to private sector where it can generate huge profits for a handful of money managers. This inquiry supports bringing all those actions to light, and if my Republican friends are not ashamed, they should support this simple inquiry. I yield back.
Member yields back. I now recognize Ms. Van Dyne.
Thank you very
5 minutes
much.
to strike the last word.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You know, when President Trump got elected, he promised to change the status quo and bring accountability to D.C., and that starts with an in-depth review of the agencies, including Social Security, that pay trillions of dollars a year out. DOJ employees are subject to the same legal penalties, and I want to make sure that we are understanding that because we've seen a lot of unsubstantiated charges today, but they are subject to the same legal penalties and fines for improper disclosure of sensitive information as every other Social Security Administrator employee. In fact, the acting commissioner of Social Security affirmatively stated that DOJ personnel cannot make changes to agency systems, benefit payments, or other information. They only have read access. DOJ personnel must follow the law, and if they violate the law, they will be deferred to the Department of Justice for possible persecution. The status quo is no longer acceptable, and Americans voted for change, and President Trump is delivering. In fact, we've heard some complaints today about the level of quality of customer service. I would have them know that I've got great news for my colleagues who requested information about the service provided by Social Security's National 800 number. Not only does the Social Security Administration already publicly post up-to-date information on the performance of that 1-800 number, but including information asked in the ROI, but that information is showing significant improvement since the service delivery lows under the Biden administration. I asked for unanimous consent to submit for the record a chart from the SSA's website showing that the 800 number's average speed of an answer for this fiscal year is 21.6 minutes. This is down, by the way, from 35.8 minutes during the Biden administration. So I would hope that all of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle would be thanking President Trump. But I also want to talk about some of the most egregious and easily provable lie that we've heard on this side, that President Trump wants to get rid of or deduct from Social Security, wants to reduce Social Security. President Trump has promised to increase the efficiency and accountability of Washington's bureaucracy. It is a fact that waste, fraud, and abuse exist at the Social Security Administration. Fact, the Social Security Administration made an estimate of $72 billion in improper payments between 2015 and 2022. It exists. We know that it exists. The Social Security's Office of the Inspector General found that. President Trump has repeatedly stated that he will fight for Social Security. President Trump has repeatedly stated that he will protect Social Security. And President Trump has repeatedly stated that he will not cut Social Security. House Republicans stand with President Trump's commitment to preserving and strengthening Social Security benefits for seniors that they count on. But in addition to that, I don't want to just talk for the president because we have all heard him say it numerous times, but let the president's words speak for themselves.
Touched. Other than this fraud or something, we're going to find it's going to be strengthened, but won't be touched. Medicare, Medicaid, none of that stuff is going to be touched. Nothing. Social Security will not be touched. It'll only be strengthened. I'm not going to touch Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Now we're going to get fraud out of there. Look, Social Security won't be touched. Other than this fraud or something, we're going to.
So I don't know how many times the man has to say it. He has repeated it publicly a number of times. If you go to the White House website, they have it published a number of times. I keep hearing this lie over and over again. They know it's wrong. I would really hope that we could all work and want to have it be more effective, a more efficient program, and that's what we're here to do, and I would hope that I can get my other colleagues on the other side of the aisle to agree with that, and with that I yield.
Member yields. I now recognize Mr. Evans for 5 minutes to strike the last word.
I move to strike the last word. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling this make-up today for us to address two important resolutions which demands transparency in the federal government. I know my Republican colleagues are big fans of government transparency, so I expect they will vote in favor of these resolutions. Over the weekend, I held a town meeting, thousands of constituents in my district. During my town hall, numerous constituents submitted questions regarding the treatment that the Trump administration posed to Social Security. Many of my constituents wanted to know what Congress is doing to protect the information from Trump, Musk, and their hackers that are taking over the government. The answer to them is that this bill is what the government is doing. By paying the resolution of inquiry, Congress will be able to demand answers from the administration on how American data being illegally retrieved from addressing the Social Security Administration and is being restricted on how service and payment to Social Security recipients will be impacted. I think it would be a no-brainer that this committee would want more information on how our constituents are being served and how the official handling this information are being honored. A vote against this resolution is a vote to protect Donald Trump and Mr. Musk and vote against protecting the American people. Mr. Chairman, there's probably no more significant issue, as you heard the members talking about Social Security and what it means. All of us stand behind it, particularly on the Democratic side, because for what it's done, it's an earned benefit. It's something people need. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to yield, pass it to Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Evans, for yielding. I just want to point out that was mentioned by one of our colleagues that the President Trump has made all these pledges and promises to protect Social Security, and we shouldn't be worried. But we are worried because, his right-hand person is calling it a Ponzi scheme. Republican members of Congress have bills to do away with it and to privatize it and to let it phase out. This is terribly concerning. And I want to point out that all of these promises that then candidate Trump made, we're hearing about from our friends on the other side of the dais, none of those were a promise to privatize Social Security. And that's what he's talking about now. It's been pointed out that he's against waste, fraud, and abuse. Well, we're all against waste, fraud, and abuse. But the fact of the matter is, the Trump administration is firing federal prosecutors across the country, threatening to impeach any judges that don't agree with him. And it looks to me like if there's a big void in this fraud area, if there's all this fraud that's being being discovered, why aren't there charges being filed? Fraud is against the law. And if someone breaks the law, you file charges against them. I haven't seen any fraud charges being brought up after all this investigative work. Waste, we've seen the result of all of the reported waste, the waste of people 350 years old collecting Social Security benefits. We already know that that's just not only a false claim, but it's a laughable claim. So I'm not sure where this waste is. If there is waste, let's work together to do away with it. And as far as abuse, the most abuse that I've seen so far is the abuse that our constituents who rely on Social Security and Medicare or Medicaid are experiencing right now. That's very abusive what's going on. I yield back to balance my time.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize Mr. Snyder for 5 minutes to strike the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word. I'm proud to join my Democratic colleagues today to support H.Res. 195 to compel the Trump administration to provide to this body all information pertaining to Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency's attacks on the Social Security Administration. I can tell you my constituents are writing, calling, pleading. They are profoundly concerned about what the DOGE or DOGE is doing to Social Security. Maybe there's a good plan, but they don't know, and the words we're hearing, Elon Musk calling it a Ponzi scheme, give reason, legitimate reason for concern. The American people deserve to know what DOGE is doing, whether it is strengthening or undermining Social Security and the safety net in this country. Social Security is an earned benefit. Period, stop. After a lifetime of hard work, millions of current and future retirees are counting on their Social Security benefits that they worked for, they paid for, that they have earned. I didn't think that I would have to sit in this hearing room and make the case to my Republican colleagues, but we must do everything we can to protect Social Security. 40-plus years ago, Congress worked together to strengthen Social Security for the next generations. That burden is falling on us, and unfortunately, we are turning our back and abdicating our responsibilities, Congress's responsibilities, acquiescing to the demands of an unelected oligarch. Social Security is under direct threat from Elon Musk and DOGE. The millions of workers who have followed the rules for their entire careers and paid into this system deserve to trust that their hard-earned benefits will not be cut by an unelected oligarch. My Republican colleagues today will tell you that the Trump administration will not hurt Social Security benefits. We even heard a recording of the president's voice, and that the Democrats are needlessly causing panic or obsessed with Elon Musk. Let me be clear. I would love to never think or hear from Elon Musk ever again. I wish I could count on the president to be true to his words. History has shown otherwise. This week I had a telephone town hall, and I promise you that the people on that town hall are frightened about the actions of Elon Musk and the false promises of President Trump. They are scared that their benefits are at risk. I wish I could provide them the comfort and confidence that Social Security is safe. But sadly, that's not the world we're living in today. Elon Musk thinks Social Security, and again I am quoting, is the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time. And he's the one in the driver's seat. Benefits that are earned by people working and paying into a system are not a Ponzi scheme. Elon Musk has said that the fraud in Social Security is the big one to eliminate. I agree we should eliminate fraud. We should work to eliminate waste. We can all agree that there are improvements to be made in the federal government, and processes can always be made more efficient to better serve the American people. That's not what DOGE is doing. In my home state of Illinois, we have 2.3 million Social Security beneficiaries, people who rely on their Social Security income that they paid for and earned to make ends meet, to give them the security and a dignified retirement. They want good customer service. We talked about it here. One of my colleagues said that, hey, we're improving customer service. Well, DOGE is planning to close Social Security field offices and hearing offices and reduce staff. That's not going to improve service. What impact will that have on the 70 million Americans who receive Social Security benefits? Rather than improving service, these actions will undermine Social Security's ability to serve beneficiaries and deliver payments on time with certainty. And that's just wrong. Social Security is a sacred trust. It is the foundation of our economic security. The American people deserve to know what the administration is planning for the future of Social Security and the Social Security Administration and what impact that will have on their benefits. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support this resolution, simply asking for transparency, for information about what the administration is doing to an earned benefit Americans have worked hard for. If it's true, as my Republican colleagues say, that Musk is no threat to the system, let this resolution prove us wrong. And if, as we believe, Musk has plans to privatize, to minimize, to reduce, and ultimately eliminate Social Security, we should know that as well. The American people deserve to know the truth. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and now recognized from Florida, Mr. Bean.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much, and a very good afternoon to you. Good afternoon, Ways and Means Committee. We agree. There is something that these two sides that keep going back and forth agree on. The American people are scared and confused, and there's one reason why they are scared and confused about Social Security, because these folks on the left of me keep saying falsely that President Trump and these Republicans want to cut, privatize, or eliminate Social Security. It is simply not true. When you bang your hand on the dais and you raise your voice to scare the American people and confuse them, I don't think it does us any good. Because I'm going to tell you the truth, American people. I don't know what camera to look at if I'm looking directly at the American people. The American people need to know this town, our government, is addicted to spending. They're addicted to spending, and we are an addict of spending. Both parties have abused it. Both parties have overspent. And now our promise to the American people to always give you your money through Social Security is in jeopardy. In 9 years, if we don't make changes in 9 years, 2034, changes will come automatically, and these benefits will be adjusted downward. And that's the last thing that President Trump, this committee, Chairman Smith, Chairman Estes, who showed us last week in a slideshow that's really terrifying, that we have to make changes. So we're gonna have to cut ourselves off. It's like an addict realizing that changes are gonna have to be made. We bring in an auditor who points out all of this crazy spending, and because some people can't defend the crazy spending found, their playbook is the only card to play is to blame the auditor. It's almost as if we owned a store that was robbed. Elon Musk watches the video and says, here's who stole from you. And then we say, oh my gosh, I can't believe he looked at the videotape. He had no authority to look at the videotape of who robbed me. So people, we have to come together. And I want you to know your words have consequences. You have vilified Elon Musk, who's working for free. He is a government employee, but he's working for free. I've got 2 articles of massive attacks nationwide on Elon Musk's Tesla program and dealerships. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I've got a CBS News article, Molotov cocktails, arson, graffiti across the nation, as well as an online edition of Order in Courts of all of the things that are happening to charging stations across the United States. And without objection, I ask that they be entered into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
So we're addicted to spending. We got to cut ourselves off. Now, I know we keep hearing Elon Musk is unelected. He's unelected. Let me tell you who is unelected. Whoever was using Biden's auto pen for the last 4 years, that is who is unelected. I've heard some history stories this morning. I'm going to give you the history, the real history of the last time we came together to solve problems. Let me tell you who did it. It was, how about this? It was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich from both sides of the political spectrum came together, and they passed the last balanced budget. And how about this? Bill Clinton did it through the elimination of 428,000 employees, and he did it through $25,000 buyouts. He offered buyouts for federal employees. And so that is the playbook of how we can get it done. Let me tell you, American people, I'm looking at you, and I'm making an honest plea to this committee and everybody watching. If we're going to solve it, maybe we need to go to a room where there's no cameras and we can be honest that we're going broke. We have an addiction to spending. And it's just hard to realize that that can't continue. We're on an unsustainable path. That is the dangerous existential threat to our country. It's just that we're spending ourselves into oblivion. So finally, we're realizing we've got a government we can't afford, we've got employees we can't afford, and we are finally right-sizing. I know it hurts, but if we're going to be the land of the free for our children and grandchildren, then we must make these hard decisions right now. Stand with me, Democrats, stand with me, Republicans, and let's go forward for the American people, get this job done for our kids and grandkids. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and I recognize from California, Mr. Panetta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word. To my colleague and good friend from Florida, Mr. Bean, look, man, fact is that the Clinton administration had a plan. That's all we're asking for. We just want to see the plan. That's the intent of this resolution right here. It's very straightforward. And more importantly, it's desired and it's demanded by my constituents in California's 19th Congressional District. All it would do would require the administration to provide Congress with details about what the heck Elon Musk and Doge is doing in their accessing of sensitive information at the Social Security Administration. All we're asking for is transparency, and this inquiry would do that by requiring information about the actions taken by Doge to reduce staff and shut down offices at the Social Security Administration. We are asking because these actions directly impact the delivery of benefits to all of our constituents. Now, in my district alone, over 140,000 people receive Social Security benefits, with 282 million in monthly benefits. That's 120,000 retirees, 5,000 children, and 8,000 disabled workers. To get those benefits, my constituents need a Social Security Administration that is responsive, that's prompt, and just able to do its dang job. Now, I agree, we'll have to do something about the Social Security Administration. If we don't have serious conversations about it, about how we shore it up, about how we fix it, we got to do that, because if we don't, we lose it by 2034. Something needs to be done. But that something is not putting it in the wood chipper without a plan. Because if you allow Elon Musk to do that, then you will be held accountable. Now, one of the things that I pride myself on, and I think if you're a good member of Congress, all of us pride ourselves on this, is casework, making the federal government work for people at a personal level. That's what inspired me to run for Congress, because I heard about it throughout my life. This is how we are doing our jobs, that we can then affect people's lives for the better. And when they have an issue with the federal government, when it comes to the services of the federal government that they have earned, they come to us. IRS, veterans, passports, immigration, and of course, Social Security. They rely on us to help them with that. And since I've been in office, we have worked on thousands and thousands of cases related to Social Security. And I'm proud to say that when it comes to Social Security, we have had numerous success stories for people who come to us after struggling to get answers. So we get the inquiry, we get on the horn, and we push the agencies to get them to do the right thing, to get to yes for our constituents. We highlight the issue, we push the issue, and there are people there to help us solve the issue. Now, unfortunately, this administration is doing the exact opposite. It's putting the Social Security Agency in a wood chipper by cutting the people and gutting the systems that help us, that help our constituents get their earned benefits. They want to decimate it. They want to tear it down, and eventually it looks like that they want to privatize it. They are doing this by planning to close nearly 50 field offices and slashing the Social Security workforce by 12%. They have not provided evidence to prove that this can be done without impacting benefits. If anything, they are proving the opposite. Closing field offices means longer travel times and less help for people looking for guidance. Reducing the workforce means fewer people to review disability claims, hear appeals, answer phones, and sort through the paperwork required to claim survivor benefits. Last year, Social Security call wait times were actually improving and reduced to 13 minutes. This year, they're already back to doubling that time at over a half hour. What's worse is that as a part of these cuts by Doge, the acting Social Security Commissioner, Leland Dudek, said himself that outsiders who are unfamiliar with the nuances of the Social Security programs are making decisions and they will make mistakes. Mr. Chairman, mistakes could have terrible consequences for our constituents, for your constituents, and for the access of benefits that they have earned. Look, our duty as members of Congress is to conduct oversight. That means asking the administration basic questions about what they are doing with taxpayer resources and why these actions have been taken. Like I said, and I think many of you, all of us, are proud of the casework we do when we make government work for people. But when those services stop or get reduced, the least that we can do is live up to our responsibility as members of Congress to find out why, how, and what. We're asking for it, but let me tell you, our constituents, your constituents, are demanding it. So it's well past time that we stop abdicating our constitutional responsibilities and start pushing back on this administration, Elon Musk, and Doge. We fight to ensure that our constituents get those services. Let's fight to keep those services, especially when it comes to Social Security. We can do that by supporting this resolution of inquiry and report it favorably. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and now recognize Ms. Delbene for 5 minutes to strike the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield my time to Mr. Larson.
I thank the gentlelady from Washington. And I would, Mr. Chairman, like to submit for the record, in fact, it just came out under the title of Democracy Dies in Darkness, Social Security facing pressure from DOGE weighs big cuts to phone service. You question why we want to have Elon Musk in front of us. And here, the very group that he's leading is pressuring people to do away with the phone service. As Mr. Panetta just mentioned, his constituents are responding, as are all of our constituents.
Pursuant to the unanimous
Because-
consent request that's so ordered.
Pardon?
Unanimous consent so ordered.
Thank you for, and continuing with this article, because I think it's very relevant to the discussion here and should be part of the record. It would take me 10 minutes to read it. But it deserves to be here, along with, we've heard today a lot about facts. Here's the facts. Here's the truth. There are over 70 million Americans who rely on Social Security. 10,000 baby boomers a day become eligible for Social Security. There has been no adjustment to Social Security in over 50 years. 5 million of your fellow Americans get below poverty level checks from Social Security, having paid into it all their lives. Most of them are women, and of them, most of them are women of color. For close to 50% of all Americans, Social Security is the main thing they have. The genius of Franklin Delano Roosevelt is still with us today. It is the safety net for capitalism that you guys should be joining with us to make sure that we preserve and extend and provide that opportunity where you have an environment where you can take risk, knowing that there's a safety net there for the very people who work hard and play by the rules every day to make that investment. I yield my remaining of my time to Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. So my friend, Mr. Bean, pointed out a couple of things that I think are really important. So let's take a look at the record. In 1981, President Reagan presided over a substantial tax cut. In 1982, President Reagan looked at the tax cut and said, no, 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 it's too much, we have to revisit it, which he did. In 1990, President Bush Sr., after having made a pledge at a Republican National Convention, based on what he thought were the facts at the time, came back and looked at the facts in 1990 and changed his mind. In 1993, Bill Clinton, he decided that there had to be cuts and revenue increases. In 1997, again, it took place. I would also point out that the Republican leader at the time, Bob Michael, a distinguished member of Congress and a really nice guy, by the way, he went along with it. What President Bush wanted to do, and then subsequently what came to be the balanced budgets, took place 4 times. I don't understand for the life of me how we can say that we're about to add, over the objections of this side, $4 trillion to the national debt through tax cuts and say that's going to give us a balanced budget. The logic escapes all of us. So let's take Reagan, Bush, and Clinton twice and use those models for getting to what we all would like, and that's a more balanced budget picture.
Now recognize Mr. Arrington for 5 minutes to strike the last word.
I thank the chairman. Every dime that is wasted in the Social Security Administration in administrating the benefits to our beloved seniors, and quite frankly, any government program, is a dime that doesn't go to the intended beneficiary, to people that depend on these programs. And in the case of Social Security, every dime that we're not vigilant, every dime of waste that we're not vigilant about rooting out shortens the solvency of the Social Security Trust Fund, which now has a fuse of 8 years before every senior, every retiree that depends on that safety net will take an automatic 20% cut. And that's indisputable. We all agree with that. So unless and until both sides come together to actually fix the broken Social Security system so it's there and sustainable for generations, we ought to do the first order of business, and that is reducing and eliminating wasteful spending and inefficiencies in the program. I don't think there's a senior in America that would not support that. And look, if this were about just merely having a plan, we just want to know, this is just an innocent request for a little more information and transparency, then there wouldn't be this rhetoric about they're decimating the program, they're gutting the program, they're utterly destroying the program. I don't believe you right now. I don't believe that it is this sincere attempt to just understand what the plan is, because the rhetoric isn't consistent with that. It's rhetoric that is scaring our seniors. In fact, I think it's predatory. And it is not productive to the end of having us work together. And we both know, both sides know this, because I know my friend Mr. Larson has a plan. But when the Democrats had full control from top to bottom of this town, they didn't put that plan on the floor. They didn't advance it. Now, you were willing to do it. I appreciate your leadership. I don't like your plan, but you had the courage to put it forward. We all should accept the reality, political reality, that it's going to take both sides to do it, just like with Reagan and Tip O'Neill. Let me finish my point, if I may. This is not going to help us get there. This is why this place is broken, and this is why it's nearly impossible for both sides to come together, because the baseball bat, the political baseball bat, is taken out so easily and quickly to beat the other side when they're trying to do the right thing. The president said he's not going to touch the benefits, he's going to protect it. But in every program and in every way, it's being poorly managed, and dollars are misspent and misappropriated, and there's waste, and the taxpayers and the beneficiaries are being defrauded. He's going to be vigilant. His colleagues, like Elon Musk and others who've been tasked with this, will be diligent, and so will we. That is, I think, an expectation of the American people. I just called the Social Security Administration, and this was the response I got. First of all, I couldn't get to a human being. They said it's going to take a couple of hours, and I don't know any senior that wouldn't give up on that, first fact. Secondly, for the disability benefits, it says we'll get back to you in 200 days. Fill out a bunch of forms, wait for 2 hours, we'll get back to you in 200 days. There's got to be a better way to run the railroad. And seniors have suffered, and it's not, the answer isn't always throw more money at it, throw more people at it. I know that's the response for those who believe in, in the government we trust. Well, it's not working. Seniors aren't getting a good response. People aren't showing up to work, and there's a bunch of waste and fraud that needs to be dealt with head on. So I don't believe this scare tactic is going to work. It will whip our seniors into a state of anxiety and distress, and that is so unfortunate and so sad. I'm out of time, and I yield back, and I'm sure I'll hear from my friend Mr. Larson.
Mr. Horsford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I request to strike the last word. As lawmakers, we have a solemn duty to protect our constituents, those beneficiaries on Social Security, from external threats and also from bad actors within. That's why I am calling on my colleagues to vote in favor of this resolution. The people who elected us did so with the trust that we would safeguard their privacy, ensuring their personal data is never politicized, sold to the highest bidder, or used to jeopardize their benefits. My constituents should believe and be able to trust that government will work on their behalf regardless of who they choose to represent them on Capitol Hill as well. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an article from CNN, Republicans Succeed in Persuading Musk, but Democrats Hit Dead Ends.
Without objection.
Earlier this week, President Trump and Elon Musk went about cherry-picking which Social Security field and hearing offices would stay open. In the article, Mr. Cole from Oklahoma was able to convince Doge to keep his local offices open while they didn't even have the decency to notify my office of their intent to close one of the critical offices in Las Vegas. Let me be clear. Members of Congress shouldn't have to kiss Elon Musk's ass to get our offices for our constituents on Social Security open or to have them remain open. I am offended by the fact that members on the other side are using their access to Elon Musk and jeopardizing the well-being of everyone else. My constituents deserve the same treatment that Representative Coles are receiving. And this is not about politics. It's not about voting Republican or Democrat or whether you belong to a party or not. And I also want to lift up this article that just came out because it speaks to the hypocrisy. While we are having this hearing today, and while the other side is objecting to even getting basic information about what Elon Musk is doing to Social Security, they literally announced ending the phone program that helps with claims processing and is used by millions of elderly and disabled Americans.
Without objection.
This data shows that the agency received 81.2 million calls to its national toll-free number in 2023, although not all were for claims. Staff within Social Security are currently gaming out scenarios for how to handle an abrupt reduction of telephone service, one of the persons briefed on the matter said. So to my colleagues, do you think this is cutting Social Security? It is. Do you think this is hurting constituents' ability to get their rightful questions asked about their earned benefit? This is not an entitlement. Do you think this is helping make government more efficient? And why wouldn't we have the person, the mastermind, the genius, Elon Musk, who's come up with this proposal to come before this committee? Or at least respond based on the list of questions that are called for in this query. I have 140,000 individuals in my district who depend on Social Security. The majority of them, it's their sole source of income. 108,000 are retirees. 16,500 are disabled workers who count on these benefits. And yeah, I'll bang on the damn dais because I'm here to defend my constituents from Elon Musk, Donald Trump, or House Republicans who will try to take away what they have invested into their own Social Security. This is money they earned. Take your hands off of the people's Social Security. It's not yours. And Elon Musk wasn't elected to do a damn thing. I yield back.
Mr. LaHood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This conversation today would be much different if we were $36 trillion in surplus, but we're not. We're $36 trillion in debt. And to think that we can't have a conversation about looking at our debt and deficit and economic policy different is political malpractice. It's government malpractice. Not to have a conversation about DOGE, not to have a conversation about cutting spending, not by having a conversation about the fiscal health of our country. And it's interesting, I also serve on our House Intelligence Committee. And last year we had General Petraeus and General McChrystal, served under Republicans and Democrats, have unbelievable reputations for serving in our military. And they came and talked to us about the threats facing America from our adversaries. So they talked about China, and they talked about Russia, they talked about Iran, but they said the biggest threat is our debt and our deficit. And as most of us should know, we're paying more now on our interest than we do the entire Department of Defense. Think about that for a sec. It's insane. But yet we can't have a conversation with a new president that ran on fixing the fiscal health of this country, created the DOGE committee, Department on Government Efficiency. Again, it's political malpractice that we're not thinking about this. I want to reference an article from it was an editorial in the Wall Street Journal, dated February 25th of this year, titled "America's Future Depends on DOGE." And I want to read one section of that. The message from today's civic elites is that the president's job is to pretend to be in charge while doing nothing meaningful. Shut up. Don't disturb the administrative state. Let it keep doing its thing without oversight or disruption. And you'll get your library or best-selling presidential memoir. Mr. Trump refuses this deal. In his second term, he's determined to slay the bureaucratic beast. He knows all too well from his first term and the Biden years. DOGE's efforts are epic, breaking more than a century of acquiescence to spending and government. The Trump team is courageously confronting the problem head on. We have an obligation and a responsibility to bring down our debt and get this country back on track economically. And the DOGE Commission and what President Trump and his team are doing is putting us on that path. I yield back.
Ms. Plaskett.
Mr. Chair, I move to strike the last word.
Ladies recognized.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You know, my colleagues today we've all been talking about accountability. And I think that this resolution speaks to accountability, because many of us believe that the Trump administration is taking a wrecking ball to Social Security Administration, and they don't want to meet with us about that. Far from making the agency more efficient, the Trump administration is undermining its ability to serve the public. And the primary question is, why? Why is this happening? Why is privatization the goal? Why are they trying to destroy Social Security? Many of us believe it's the first step of a long-standing effort by Republicans to dismantle trust in Social Security, slash benefits, and then allow people who are disgruntled and have lost faith in it to allow Wall Street to take it over. The Trump administration wants to close Social Security offices, slash agencies' workforce. The Social Security Administration is already at a 50-year staffing low due to years of underfunding. And with baby boomers increasing the number of beneficiaries, that's a recipe for disaster. How will gutting the workforce help Social Security Administration serve the American people? The point is, it does not. That's the goal. It does not. The chaos and the confusion, the constant stream of misinformation and missteps have a purpose. Let's talk about that. the misinformation, a Ponzi scheme. Listen, I'm a New Yorker. I understand a Ponzi scheme. A con man promises a payout that he can't deliver, collects the money, and disappears. That's not what's happening in the Social Security Administration, because people have put their money in it, and they are receiving a benefit. That's not a Ponzi scheme. Repeatedly stating that dead people and 150-year-olds are receiving checks, every newspaper, every group has said that that's untrue, including the Washington Post, which has already kissed the ring of the president. They're the ones also who have said that that's not true. How are we doing this? And why are we doing this? We want to bring back accountability. My colleague has stated that Doge only has read-only access. We've seen weeks ago that that's not true. Oh, they just accidentally were able to make changes to it, they told us later on, and now they've gone back to read-only access. As a lawyer, the notion that they can be prosecuted for improper disclosure, that's if you find that they've had improper disclosure, first of all, and second of all, if they keep the information for themselves for data mining, for future elections, we would never be able to find that out to be able to prosecute it, because it's not disclosed to anyone but themselves. Why are they keeping this information, and what is the purpose of it? Make no mistake, the Trump administration's actions are to devastate the Social Security Administration's ability to serve the public and deliver Social Security payments so that they can then have access to $2.7 trillion for Wall Street to be able to play with. They need more money because you know what? We're not addicted to spending, as my colleague said. Many people are addicted to greed. That's what this is about. And the greed happens to be not from themselves, but for the American people. That's the Ponzi scheme, is them taking your damn money and using it for them own self, to enrich themselves more than they already have. That's the addiction. And you know what? This place is broken because Congress has abdicated its responsibility to be the ones to find that race fraud and abuse and to do something different about it. We're letting somebody who's unelected, who's an auditor, now he's an auditor. Is he everything? Is he God? To be able to do what he wants to do with the American people. It's got to stop. I yield back.
Any further members who wish to strike the last word? Mr. Swazi.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out some basic facts that people need to understand. Jody, this is important. In the 1970s, we had about 203 million people in America. Today, we have 350 million people in America. In the 1970s, we had about 3 million federal employees. In the 1980s, we had 3.3 million federal employees. In the 1990s, we had 3.4 million federal employees. In 2020, we had 3 million, same as it was in 1970. And so we have about the same number of employees in the federal government today as we had back in the 1970s, even though the population has increased from about 203 million to 350 million people. And we've hired a lot more outside contractors than ever before. We've spent a lot more on outside contracts, like with Elon Musk, for example. But we have the same number of employees that we had back in 1970 as we do today. Now, I don't have back to 1970, but in the Social Security Department, you talked about how your phone call took a long time today. Well, who's in charge right now? Because on the day the Biden administration left, they had gotten it down to a record low response time of 12 minutes to respond to a call, which even 12 minutes to me seems like too much, but that was a record low for what it was. Today, it's going through the roof. And if you look at the number of employees in the Social Security Department, in 1999, there were 59,000 employees. In 2010, there were 66,000 employees. So 59,000 in 1999, 66,000 in 2010. At the end of the Biden administration, there were 56,000 employees, less than it was in 1999, 3,000 less than it was in 1999. And now we're talking about taking it down by another 10,000. Well, no wonder everybody's going to complain that things are broken and it's not working well, because we're trying to take it down. Now, when I was the county executive of Nassau County, we was rated the worst run county in America before I got there, I want to point out. But we went from 8,500 employees down to about 7,000 employees. We did not do it by laying off the lowest wage new employees, the probationary employees. We did it by normal attrition and by offering retirement incentives to the highest wage, most senior employees. And when those people left, we tried to make up for the reduced workforce by improving the technology and by doing consolidation and procedures and processes to make things more efficient. What we're doing now through DOGE is so haphazard and so reckless. And the idea of trying to instill this fear in people and lay off the low-wage people, the provisionary employees, in places that we're trying to hire people up to try and get to the backlogs, like in the IRS, where we make more money than we spend when we hire employees, doesn't make any sense to me. It's just bad management, and it's just scaring the hell out of everybody in the process. And there's going to be a price to pay politically for people, because most of the federal employees live in Republican districts and in Democratic districts, but we'll see that as time goes on. All the stuff we're going to see. You say we're not going to cut Social Security, we're not going to cut Medicaid, we're not going to cut Medicare. Well, we're going to find out in the next 6 months or so what people are really up to. Then we'll really know what it is. And it's not about instilling fear or not instilling fear. We're going to find out what it is as time goes on. Right now, we're concerned that what DOGE is doing is reckless and irresponsible. Do we need to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse? Yes. Do we need to make things more efficient? Yes. Do we need better technology? Yes. Do we need better procedures and processes? Yes. But the way that they're doing it right now, and I've given the examples before, laying off the people in the nuclear stockpile, laying off the people that oversee avian flu, laying off the people that oversee measles, doesn't make any sense to me. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I want to yield my remaining minute to Chairman Neal.
My friend from Illinois, he said we don't have conversations, and we have a conversation. We just disagree with you on arithmetic. The arithmetic's pretty simple. Bush Jr., $2.3 trillion worth of tax cuts. 2017, borrowing $2.3 trillion for a tax cut. Now, to hold forth on the basis of what is alleged to be this out-of-control debt. Oh, and by the way, we're going to raise the debt ceiling by $4 trillion in coming weeks so that we can pay for another tax cut. I mean, the logic escapes all of us here. How we can hold forth and suggest on one hand, we're all very concerned about the debt. Oh, but we'll borrow $2.3 trillion to add more to the debt. And now, $4 trillion we will add to the debt. But we can't have that conversation because it gets in the way of our determination to continue to do borrowing and then complain about the size of the debt. I yield back. Thank you, Chairman.
Additional members wish to strike the last word? Seeing none, are there any amendments?
I'd like to strike the last word, and I'd
Okay.
like.
Okay, we'll do that. We moved on, but we'll do that, Ms. Miller, because you don't talk nearly as much as a lot of people on this committee. So, go, Ms. Miller.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr.
He may change his
Chairman,
mind.
but I am yielding my time to Mr. Arrington.
My name.
Will the gentleman yield? Will the gentleman yield?
You know, I would only speak because my name was invoked. My name was invoked, and my honor was questioned, my integrity, my character. Tom Suozzi would never question my integrity or character. He's too good of a friend, and I wouldn't question his. I have questioned the motive here as more political than principled, and I don't like to do that. But that's my judgment right now. I think it's too wrapped up in scoring political points, and we're whipping people up into a frenzy instead of working productively to solve some problems here. But I'm not, Tom, I'd have to look at those numbers. I have not looked at the numbers. But to suggest that the federal government had the same amount of employees in the 60s and 70s as we do in the 21st century, when we didn't even have the microwave oven, let alone the internet, is not that impressive of a stat, to be frank. I think we can probably run this government more efficiently post-technology revolution. We still need people, but we need them to show up. Like, I would have an easier time receiving some of this, really, with the sincere motive of needing more information, wanting more insight, if the same passion and concern were directed to the many government employees who were not showing up for years. And this was post-pandemic, and we just accepted it as the new normal. And when we talk about, like some of my colleagues, the Democrat colleagues, about my constituents are worth it, this is their benefit, their earned benefit, I agree. I agree. But why weren't we fighting to make sure that people were seats, butts were in seats, calls were being answered, cases were being resolved? The very fact, in every congressional office experiences, we had casework through the roof for our retirees who couldn't get their phone calls returned and couldn't get their cases resolved.
Will the gentleman yield?
But where was the indignation? Where was the fight for these constituents at that time?
Will the gentleman yield?
It's a sad thing in this country that we need retirees, our beloved seniors, to have to work through their member of Congress just to get a daggum phone call returned. So I would accept some of this in a more sincere fashion if it was consistently applied when we had Democrat control and we had other big inefficiency problems. I trust the president. I trust people who have a track record of successfully and efficiently and effectively running organizations. I think this is long overdue. I think it should go across the government. I think we should get information and we should get insight and we should get the opportunity to change some of the things that are needed and codified by an act of Congress. Like, for example, in Medicaid, and I'll yield with the example of Medicaid, President Biden went back, revoked a policy that reviewed the Medicaid rolls twice a year so that we could ensure that only those legally eligible for Medicaid were receiving the benefit. That's a taxpayer safeguard. That's a safeguard for sustaining the program. And it was revoked from twice a year, and it was only done once a year. Well, that's $160 billion worth of waste and fraud because of a simple program integrity measure that was revoked. That's common sense. I don't think there's an American out there that would say, why in the world would we do that? So I appreciate some of the concern, but I think it is more political than principle, and I appreciate my colleagues, and I appreciate his
Mr.
friendship.
Chairman.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I yield back my time.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Any additional members wish to strike the last word? Are there any amendments? Seeing no amendments, I will now recognize Mr. Buchanan for the purpose of offering a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee report HRES 195 adversely to the House of Representatives.
The question is on the motion to report HRES 195 adversely to the House of Representatives. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Buchanan.
Yes.
Mr. Buchanan, yes. Mr. Smith of Nebraska. Mr. Smith of Nebraska, yes. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Schweikert. Mr. Schweikert, yes. Mr. LaHood. Mr. LaHood, yes. Mr. Arrington. Mr. Arrington, yes. Mr. Estes. Mr. Estes, yes. Mr. Smucker. Mr. Smucker, yes. Mr. Hearn. Mr. Hearn, yes. Mrs. Miller. Mrs. Miller, yes. Dr. Murphy. Dr. Murphy, yes. Mr. Kustoff. Mr. Kustoff, yes. Mr. Fitzpatrick. Mr. Fitzpatrick, yes. Mr. Stubbe. Mr. Stubbe, yes. Ms. Tinney. Ms. Tinney, yes. Mrs. Fishbach.
Yes.
Mrs. Fishbach, yes. Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, yes. Ms. Van Dyne. Ms. Van Dyne, yes. Mr. Feenstra. Mr. Feenstra, yes. Ms. Maliotakis. Mr. Carey. Mr. Carey, yes. Mr. Yakum. Mr. Yakum, yes. Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, yes. Mr. Bean. Mr. Bean, yes. Mr. Moran. Mr. Moran, yes. Mr. Neal. Mr. Neal, no. Mr. Doggett. Mr. Doggett, no. Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson, no. Mr. Larson. Mr. Larson, no. Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis, no. Ms. Sanchez. Ms. Sanchez, no. Ms. Sewell. Ms. Delbene. Ms. Delbene, no. Ms. Chu. Ms. Chu, no. Ms. Moore. Ms. Moore, no. Mr. Boyle. Mr. Boyle, no. Mr. Byer. Mr. Byer, no. Mr. Evans. Mr. Evans, no. Mr. Schneider. Mr. Schneider, no. Mr. Panetta. Mr. Panetta, no. Mr. Gomez. Mr. Horsford. Mr. Horsford, no. Ms. Plaskett. Ms. Plaskett, no. Mr. Swazi. Mr. Swazi, no. Mr. Kelly.
How is Mr. Gomez? I hear him recorded.
Mr. Gomez is not recorded. Mr. Gomez, no. Ms. Maliotakis. Ms. Sewell. Chairman Smith?
Yes.
Chairman Smith, yes.
The clerk will report the vote.
The yeses are 24, the noes are 18.
There being 24 yeses and 18 noes, the motion is agreed to, and HRES 195 is ordered reported adversely to the House. Without objection, members have 2 additional days to file with the committee clerk supplemental additional dissenting or minority views. We are adjourned.